What if I told you one of America's most powerful inventions wasn't announced, celebrated, or even taught in schools? It didn't arrive with applause or headlines. Instead, it quietly reshaped cities, controlled information, and influenced daily life, without most people ever knowing its name. This hidden invention helped build modern America, yet remains largely invisible today. Before we uncover this forgotten story, subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications, because history hides its most important lessons in plain sight. When people think of America's greatest inventions, the same names usually come up: the electric light, the telephone, the airplane, the automobile. These were bold breakthroughs. They were visible. They made noise. They changed what Americans could see and touch. But history's most powerful inventions are not always the loudest. Some work so quietly, so seamlessly, that generations forget they were ever invented at all. One such invention reshaped how Americans lived, worked, traveled, communicated, and organized society itself. It didn't sit on a factory floor. It wasn't patented in a laboratory. You couldn't hold it in your hands. Yet it changed the nation more deeply than almost any machine ever built. It was standardized time. And once it arrived, America would never experience the world the same way again. In the early 19th century, time in America was personal. Every town set its clocks by the sun. When the sun reached its highest point in the sky, it was noon, local noon. That meant noon in Boston happened several minutes earlier than noon in New York. Noon in Philadelphia was different from noon in Baltimore. Travel a few miles west, and time subtly shifted. This wasn't chaos. It was natural. Most Americans lived within a few miles of where they were born. Work followed daylight. Church bells rang when they rang. Markets opened when people arrived. Time didn't need precision. It needed rhythm. Life moved at the speed of Horses River Swindleman footsteps. Time was something you felt, not something you measured. And for centuries, this worked. Then the country changed. The 19th century was an age of acceleration. Population surged. Cities expanded. Industry grew. And most importantly, distance collapsed. Railroads began cutting across the landscape, stitching together regions that had once felt impossibly far apart. What took days now took hours. What took weeks now took days. For the first time in history, Americans could outrun the sun. And that's when time stopped making sense. At first, the issue seemed small. A train might leave one town at 10 a.m. and arrive in the next town at 9:55 a.m., according to local clocks. Passengers were confused but amused. Then the confusion became costly. Missed connections multiplied. Freight deliveries failed. Schedules collapsed. Accidents increased. Railroads tried to solve the problem independently. Some adopted railroad time. Others adjusted clocks at every station. Some printed conversion charts. None of it worked. By the 1870s, the United States was operating on more than 300 different local times. America was moving at industrial speed. But time itself was fractured. The consequences weren't just inconvenient. They were deadly. Train collisions became more frequent. Engineers misread schedules. Dispatchers misunderstood arrival times. Two trains on the same track, each believing they had the right of way, could collide head-on. People died because clocks disagreed. For the first time, timekeeping became a matter of public safety. Railroad companies realized something radical. They didn't just need better trains. They needed a new way to measure reality. In 1883, something extraordinary happened. Without a single vote from Congress. Without a constitutional amendment. Without public debate. The railroad companies made a decision that reshaped the nation. They divided the continental United States into 4 standardized time zones. Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific. On November 18, 1883, a day later called the Day of Two Noons, railroads synchronized their clocks. Across the country, clocks jumped forward or backward, sometimes by minutes, sometimes by nearly an hour. Church bells rang early or late. Factory whistles shifted. City clocks disagreed briefly, then aligned. Time itself had been redesigned. Not everyone welcomed the change. Some cities refused to comply. Others clung to local solar time. Newspapers mocked the idea of railroad time. Religious leaders warned it interfered with God's order. Citizens complained their days felt stolen. But resistance didn't last. Railroads controlled movement. Factories depended on schedules. Commerce demanded coordination. Within a few years, standardized time spread beyond railroads into business' schools, courts, government offices. What began as a corporate decision quietly became a national standard. And eventually, federal law. This wasn't just about clocks. Standardized time reshaped labor productivity, discipline, daily life. Factories now ran by the minute, not the sun. Work shifts became rigid. Lateness became measurable and punishable. Time turned into something you could lose, waste, or sell. The phrase "time is money" stopped being metaphorical. It became literal. Before standardized time, work ebbed and flowed. After standardized time, work became segmented. Start times, end times, break times. Everything was scheduled. The 8-hour workday emerged not just from labor activism, but from the mechanical regularity time zones made possible. Standardized time made mass coordination feasible. Without it, factories couldn't synchronize, cities couldn't function, modern economies couldn't scale. Time became infrastructure. Control of time meant control of people. Those who set schedules held authority. Those who followed them adapted or suffered. Time zones weren't neutral. They reflected economic priorities. Urban centers dictated schedules. Rural areas adjusted. Industrial America imposed its rhythm on the nation. And once imposed, it felt natural. That's the genius of standardized time. It disappears into normalcy. Within a generation, Americans forgot time had ever been different. Children grew up assuming noon was universal. Schedules felt eternal. Clocks felt objective. But time zones were a human invention, a solution to a human problem. Designed for speed, efficiency, and control. They shaped how Americans planned their lives, valued punctuality, understood productivity. They rewired culture itself. America wasn't alone. As railroads spread worldwide, nations followed. International time zones emerged. Global coordination became possible. Trade expanded. Telegraphs synchronized continents. The modern world took shape. What began as a railroad fix became a planetary framework. Standardized time brought efficiency, but it also brought pressure. Life accelerated. Rest diminished. Schedules tightened. Natural rhythms were replaced by mechanical ones. Sunrise mattered less than alarm clocks. Seasons mattered less than production cycles. Time stopped being something humans followed. It became something humans obeyed. Standardized time doesn't feel like an invention. There's no monument. No inventor's statue. No dramatic unveiling. Its success made it invisible. And invisibility is the highest form of power. Every deadline, every schedule, every meeting invite, every countdown, all trace back to that quiet decision in the 19th century. America didn't just invent machines. It reinvented time itself. And in doing so, it reshaped modern life. The most powerful inventions aren't always the ones that roar. Some whisper. Some tick. Some reshape reality so completely we forget they were ever made. Standardized time didn't just help America move faster. It taught the world how to live by the clock. And once that happened, there was no going back. In 1883, something extraordinary happened in the United States. It didn't arrive with fireworks. There was no declaration read aloud in Congress. No president stepped before the nation to announce it. No public vote decided its outcome. Most Americans didn't even realize it was happening. Yet in a single carefully coordinated moment, daily life across the country changed forever. Railroad companies, private corporations, not elected officials, made a collective decision. They divided the entire United States into 4 standardized time zones. And on one quiet Sunday in November, something strange occurred. It was called the Day of Two Noons. At exactly the same moment, clocks in thousands of towns were reset. Some jumped forward. Others moved backward. In many places, Noon happened twice. Without debate. Without permission. Without resistance powerful enough to stop it. For the first time in history, Americans were no longer living by the sun overhead. They were living by a shared clock. This wasn't just a technical adjustment. It was a transformation of how people experience time itself. To understand why this decision mattered so much, you have to understand how Americans lived before standardized time. In the early 19th century, time was local. Every town kept its own clock based on the position of the sun. When the sun reached its highest point in the sky, that was noon. No two towns shared the exact same time. A clock in Boston might differ from one in New York by several minutes. Chicago could be nearly 10 minutes off from St. Louis. Small towns adjusted their clocks casually, sometimes weekly, sometimes seasonally. This wasn't chaos. It was simply how life worked. Farmers rose with daylight. Church bells rang when the sun stood high. Markets opened when people arrived, not when a clock demanded it. Time was flexible, human, forgiving. If someone arrived late, it wasn't a moral failing, it was normal. But as the 19th century progressed, America began to change. And local time could no longer keep up. The invention that shattered local time wasn't a clock. It was the railroad. By the mid-1800s, railroads were spreading across the United States at breathtaking speed. Steel tracks connected cities, states, and regions that had once felt worlds apart. But railroads had a problem. They ran on schedules. And schedules required precision. When every town kept its own time, planning train arrivals became dangerous. A train might leave one city at 10 a.m. and arrive somewhere else at 10:07 a.m. or 9:52 a.m., depending on whose clock you trusted. Collisions became more likely. Missed connections increased. Commerce slowed. Railroads needed a single system, one that ignored the sun and obeyed mathematics. So railroad engineers and executives did something radical. They invented railroad time. In October 1883, representatives from major railroad companies met and agreed on a plan. They divided the continental United States into 4 time zones: Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific. Each zone would share a single standardized time. No federal law authorized this. No democratic process approved it. It was a private solution to a private problem. But railroads weren't just transportation companies. They were the arteries of the nation. Businesses depended on them. Cities were built around them. Mail, food, news, and people moved at their pace. So when railroads changed time, America followed. On November 18, 1883, at exactly noon Eastern Time, clocks across the country shifted. Some towns experienced noon twice. Others skipped it entirely. And just like that, local time died. This invention didn't roar like a steam engine or flash like electricity. But it did something no machine ever had. It synchronized millions of lives. Work schedules aligned. Business hours standardized. Transportation became reliable. Communication gained urgency and meaning. Factories could now operate with precision. Markets could open and close together. News could be reported and understood instantly. Time became a structure, measured, regulated, and enforced. America had entered the age of coordination. For the first time, daily life was governed by a system that demanded punctuality, not convenience. And once time became standardized, it never went back. Not everyone welcomed this new clock. Many communities resisted. Farmers argued the sun, not a railroad, should decide their day. Church leaders questioned whether God's time could be replaced by corporate schedules. Some towns simply refused to change their clocks. Newspapers mocked the system. Political cartoons portrayed time as something stolen, captured by corporations and sold back to the public. People weren't just losing minutes. They felt they were losing control. Lateness, once harmless, became shameful. Being on time became a measure of character. But resistance faded quickly. Because once standardized time entered schools, workplaces, and transportation, it became unavoidable. And eventually, it became invisible. Once time was standardized, it became more than a convenience. It became a tool. Companies could now measure productivity by the hour. Schools could divide learning into periods. Cities could coordinate services with precision. Time stopped being flexible. It became authoritative. People began to describe themselves as ahead or behind. Life became scheduled. Efficiency became a measure of worth. This changed culture. Your value wasn't just what you produced, but how fast you produced it. All from an invention most people never think about. America wasn't alone. As international trade expanded, other nations followed. Standardized time spread across continents. Global travel became possible. Shipping routes aligned. Diplomacy synchronized. Eventually, the world adopted coordinated systems that still govern us today. Every meeting reminder, every deadline, every countdown, they all trace back to this quiet decision. So why don't most people know this story? Because it wasn't dramatic. There were no explosions, no famous speeches, no single inventor. It was a system invention, born from necessity, cooperation, and pressure. And history often overlooks systems. But systems shape everyday life more than singular moments ever could. Today, you don't just use standardized time. You live inside it. Your phone updates automatically. Your calendar rules your day. Your work, rest, and movement obey the clock. It's so embedded that imagining life without it feels impossible. That's the mark of a truly powerful invention. History isn't just about loud moments. It's about quiet decisions that reshape behavior. Invisible systems that guide millions. Ideas that outlive their creators. America wasn't built only by machines you can see. It was shaped by ideas you feel, every single day. Standardized time didn't just organize America. It transformed how people thought about life, value, and progress. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because history isn't only behind us. It's ticking all around us. If this story changed how you see everyday life, share it. Subscribe for more hidden history, explained clearly, responsibly, and one forgotten invention at a time. Thanks for watching.